they can start speaking life into them and
Yeah.
making sure that they, even if they just decide, because you got to remember sometimes we grew up with under harsh circumstances and people saying things, you just like your aunt or you just like your father or something like that. It's make sure that you say something positive. Even when you ask them how was their day, even when you're looking at their grades and you say, well, what can you do to pull this grade? Make sure you already celebrated them and say, I see you pulled your grade up. I've seen you've done well. How can I help you? So trying to speak life, even when you can't speak life into yourself, speak life into someone else. And that would also have you to think about something. And you begin to say something positive about them.
Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Authors Impact Hub podcast. I am your host, Juanita Woodson, and I am joined today by Dr. Linda Holloway. So, super excited to learn a little bit more about your book and your author journey. If you could tell us where you are from, just a little bit about your background, but don't give too much because we want to get into the Q&A and the title of the book we're discussing.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. I am Dr. Linda J.M. Holloway. I'm a faculty member at Alabama State University here in Montgomery, Alabama, but I'm originally from the great state of Mississippi. I've been in higher education for over 30 years. I retired from the military after serving over 31 years as a colonel in the Medical Service Corps, and I completed 4 comeback tours, and I've written 8 award-winning children books.
Okay, awesome. So you definitely have a pretty extensive background. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your background and your author journey. But before we get into our Q&A, let's start with an icebreaker question, right? So if you can describe your author journey in one word, what would that be and why?
I would describe it as breathtaking. And the reason why I was describe it as that, because I never really set out to be an author, and just learning about the various things and people willingness to support me, provide me information. So each time it was just really breathtaking, just to take my breath away. And writing in academia and then writing children's books is totally two different things. Breathtaking in terms of how people gravitate, how people have treated me, and I told a friend once, I said, people treat you differently when you become a book author versus when you write a journal article. I said, but I was already an author. I said, but they make you seem almost like a celebrity or something. So it's been really exciting. It's been very breathtaking.
Absolutely. Yes. I don't know if maybe it's having something that they can hold in their hand, right? That makes them treat you different, but you were already an author, so you had accomplished that already. But
Absolutely. And I
um,
think it's one thing about academia writing, you're writing for people who may not necessarily open up those journals, but now people see you in person, the children see you, and so you're writing for what I call everyday people, that they can reach out and touch you and feel you and hear your voice. So,
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So what inspired you to write I Love My Happy Hair? And I love the title of that book.
ooh, what inspired me to write was I'm literally sitting in church one day in prayer and asking God what to write about next. And so it was about, you should write about black hair. And so when I began to combine that with subject areas I was already teaching, career counseling, so I wrote about Black women here in the marketplace. So as I began to research that and look at all the different women who had been discriminated against, and some of them who have lost their jobs as a result of the way they wore their hair. But they often would tell me a hair story, and it began in their childhood. And so it had me to reflect back on my own childhood of getting my hair done. And I thought, well, these women were once children. How can I have a product that I can take out into the community that can reach young children to share with them about not only celebrating and appreciating their hair, but other people's hair? And so that's what led me to, because I wanted something that they could, as you mentioned earlier, put in their hand, tangibly hold. And so that's what led me to I Love My Happy Hair.
Yes, I'm so you said that and it made me think back to my own hair journey, right? I have locks now, But
Right.
I've gone through like so many different stages with just trying to love my hair and embrace it. And it definitely starts from when you were a child for sure. So tell us a little bit about this book and the character in this book.
Well, first of all, before I kind of get into just telling you about the book, I want to show people what the
Yeah.
book looks like. Yeah, because I think it's so exciting to see the young lady on the front part of the book. The character of the book is Little Miss Linda, which is my voice. Just a little part of me telling that story. And she's a young lady who grows up in Mount Bayou. I'm from Mount Bayou. Ideally, when I introduce myself, I talk about being from Mount Bayou because it's an historically Black town, one of the first historically Black towns. It was found by two former enslaved individuals. So I create that scenario. I find joy in telling people, as well as my students and everyone, I grew up on a farm. I grew up chopping and picking cotton. Because oftentimes people feel like that is so far removed. They've seen the last people who have picked cotton. And it's like, oh, you're too young to have picked cotton. So I include all of that in there and about her growing up on the farm and that her mother encouraging her to like her hair. So that's a little bit about the character. I said it in that content because it allows people to not only just learn about Little Miss Linda, but it learns about where she's from and to begin to research and understand about Mount Bayou and the people that from Mount Bayou and that tenacity, their resilience and their persistence to have overcome so much because people have heard about, the other, like Rosewood, the town Greenswood, in Oklahoma, several other Black towns, but not many people are very familiar with Mount Bayou. And I take them back to, the story of Emmett Till and her mother being there. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know, I remember. And so it's just really exciting to create that with the character in her setting, and then also tell some things about my own life, having grown up on the farm.
Yes, absolutely. I love that this is almost like a history lesson, right? Learning
Absolutely.
to love your hair, learning to love your culture and where you're from too. So we know that hair is such a big part of our identity, especially as women, as Black women, right? It is such a big part of us. So why do you think it was important to center this message in the children's book?
Because we have so many children that are weaponized by their hair. And like you said, our hair has been demonized from the time that they saw us to bringing us over and calling lots dread because their hair was dreaded and not being able to have the unique tools to take care of our hair. And so oftentimes on Sundays with the fellowship and when they would get together, they would use oil from the wheels that they would literally oil the wheels of different machineries. And they will sit and talk in fellowships and sometimes the women will walk for miles. But this was something they had celebrated before. And when you begin to study and learn about the history of Black people in their hair, you found that they brought okra seeds in their hair. You found out they had messages in terms of people being able to escape. They had roadmaps. So hair meant a lot, and God knew that our hair was our glory to tell our stories. And there's other people did not know that. And because we were placed in a culture that did not celebrate that and did not understand our hair, but before then, if you go back, the hair there in that particular culture in Africa, it meant something. It could tell whether a woman was married, whether she was divorced, whether she was widowed, and all of those things by the way she wore her hair, whether she was a warrior or her husband was off to war. History played a really significant role. And so being able to celebrate and being able to love is being able to bring that history in so that people can have a foundation that it's just not about, okay, I need to look like somebody else, because you have to understand what was the standard of beauty in Western culture. It was not this what the way we wore our hair. And no, Bo Derek was not the first person to invent braids, and so we'll begin to celebrate those kinds of things. We're understanding the context and what hair mean and how we can utilize and wear our hair and natural the way it grows out of our head, because the way our hair grows or the way our nose or hips or whatever it is has always been seen as a tragedy. It's always been seen as something negative. So now that we can do that, we can do that. And even when women, there's a law that came out in New Orleans. Women were wearing their hair, and so then they said, "Oh well, they need to wrap their head." So as you notice, I have a head wrap, so to wear the turbans and to wear the head wrap, and so the women were wearing these really beautiful colors because the men were attracted to them. So they began to soon learn that no matter what you do and give to a black woman, she's going to turn it into something totally fantastic. So they wore these beautiful scarves and very colorful turbans on their head. Because one time I did something and somebody said, "Oh, well, she talks about hair, but you can't see her hair because her hair wrapped." It's not about seeing my hair. It's not that I don't celebrate my hair, because I wear my hair short, very, very short. But it's about that I can do a lot of different things with my hair.
Yes, I love how creative we can be with our hair, right? With the hair wrap, you can have locks, you can have short hair, you can have long hair, so many different variations that come with Black women and their hair. I love it. Yes, I love this conversation. I feel like I'm learning so much in this little bit of time. It's making me want to go and do deeper research on it
Absolutely.
because I just don't think that I've ever taken the time to do that research. So I'm glad that I am talking to the expert in that.
Sometimes when people see children book, they think, "Oh, you just wrote a few little words and you just on the page." But one of the things, because I do love history, is I've researched all of the topics that I had the pleasure of writing about. I wouldn't consider myself to be an expert, but it did allow me to learn about hair from Africa. It allowed me to learn about the different rules and regulations and how we were not able to, wear our hair. So even when you would see some of the pictures during slavery time, the women would have their hair wrapped. It was a protection for the sun. They were trying to protect their hair. So they would take some people might call it a rag or whatever, but it was just a scarf to cover and protect their hair from the harshness of the sun. Because you got to remember, these people were working from sun up to sundown, and I can attest to that, because when you work in the field, you get up early in the morning before the sun, and then you want to get as much work done before the sun is down, because you no longer can see, so it has rhythm to that.
Yes, absolutely. So I know in your probably your research, right, even as an educator, you've written multiple children's books. So what are some of the challenges that you maybe see children face when it comes to their self-image and confidence? And then how does your children's book maybe help them to overcome some of those challenges?
Okay. Well, some of the challenges that children see, obviously, is exposed to the social media. And so what they see as the standard of beauty, what is they're being fed. So anytime you're fed something, then obviously that becomes in your frontal lobe. You begin to think that's what it is. And so representation matter. So being able to see a Black character, being able to see a young girl and her mother teaching her about her hair. And she used some of the basic stuff. She has a hot comb. She has blue magic grease. So all of these things that they can relate to, they can identify with. And so this helps to elevate them. This helps them to appreciate by having these things. So like, as you mentioned, what is it that this book does for them, and what are some of the challenges? And so those are the challenges. And people don't necessarily see, if I don't feel good about who I am, if I'm not really into how my hair is looking today, whether it's male or female, and depending on whatever ethnic background you're from, I might not show up at school. So that means I'm missing work. And people say, "Oh, no, that's this." So there is a relationship between academic excellence and feeling good about who I am. So when Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King also said, "I am somebody," they were instilling, giving us praise to say, you are somebody, doesn't matter where you come from, how you are in the moment that people will see you, you are somebody. And so being able to say that and give them that sense of empowerment lets them know, okay, I can sit in front of the class. I can be okay. And, because I am being judged. So that's what the book does. It increases what I call hair esteem. I also created a term kind of called hair bullying. But people think about all the other kinds of bullying. But people have been bullied about their hair. Don King wore his hair in such a style. And I said he did that so he could for attention, so people can say something about the way that he wore his hair. If you think about Mr. T, all of this is traction around the way they was wearing their hair, or not wearing their hair.
Yeah. And so many children are still bullied
Mhm.
because of their hair. So you describe yourself as a story activist. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
What that means is I create story around activism. So even around the I love my happy hair. I've gone into just in here in the city of Montgomery, where I'm currently residing, over 31 schools reaching, third graders. And so what I do in terms of activism is not just telling a story, presenting facts or anything like that. How can I make a change so becoming an advocate? So in the book there's a, I guess you can say like a, a quote, or they take some kind of thing where they say that they will not tease other people there, and so they have this where they say this, and so I wanted them to leave so they become champions of other individuals. Like I said, it's not only just about Black people in their hair, but I've had other people from other ethnic backgrounds to say, I didn't come to school because I didn't like the way my hair. I didn't like my hair. It's too curly, it's too straight, and whatever. I don't particularly like the color. People say blondes are dumb, redheads or, fiery, or whatever the case, these stereotypes are. So we become activism, we become to celebrate. Or you might even have a student who's suffering from cancer, so their hair is not there. And so being able to become advocate and say that I will not. So we say this at the end, that they stand up for them, that I will not tease or anyone about the way that their hair grow out of their head. So
Absolutely.
they take this pledge. I was
That's what
that
that is.
way. So they have a pledge. So that's what story activism is. They tell a story, but it's designed to motivate, to activate, to empower people beyond just education. It's one thing to make people aware of something, but so now that you're aware that I've been teased about my hair, now that you're aware that I've been fired about my hair, now that you're aware that my hair is different, now that you're aware that I don't want you to touch my hair, then what? So why? And what does this mean? And so so the activism comes in, you put things into actions and to make a difference.
Absolutely. And I love that this book, it connects different cultures too, right? Because you get to learn about the background of Miss Linda's hair, right? You get to learn the different things that she did to keep her hair growing. But also, like you said, like, why I don't like you to touch my hair, because that's been a thing. I've had people that would just come up and I come to work one day with my hair this way, and the next way is different, and they just will touch your hair. And I don't think that like a lot of people understand the boundaries that come with like
Yeah,
not just
yeah,
reaching out and touching my hair.
it's hair boundaries. Yeah, that's just.
Yes, absolutely. So why do you think it's important to start conversations about self-love and identity at a young age?
Because those are developmental age, and those are the ages where you're like a sponge. And so if you're not getting it then, obviously you're going to grow up and you're going to not feel good about who you are, and you're going to feel, like life is meaningless. And so being able to start early on is very significant. So if you think about the education system, that's when or parenting, parent wants to train a child early on, train up a child in the way they should go, so you're training this youth of mine, or some people call it a blank sheet of paper, tabula rasa. So you're writing these ideas and pouring into them so that they can feel a certain kind of way, they can have a sense of pride, they can have a sense of self-esteem, because we know that these things lead to other things. Because if I don't feel like I have meaning and I feel devalued, I don't feel loved, then I may make some choices that are very inappropriate because I'm seeking love in all the wrong places. Or I have been told that, something is negative about who I am. So therefore, I am, you know, take the back seat. Therefore, I am not willing to move forward. Therefore, I shrink. Therefore, I don't use my voice or my language. And so this allows us to educate, to empower, and to elevate people that they can become and do the things that they can do.
Yes, it starts at a young age. It starts at home, right? So I have a client, Dr. Tiffany, she wrote a book, We Say, right? So just empowering author or empowering children at that young age to speak life into themselves because there were seasons where I did not like my hair.
Mm-hmm,
So I cut my hair off, you know what I mean? So you go through those different stages. And I just think that there are times I don't want to leave the house because my hair is not
mm-hmm,
done. Right? So I love that this book is empowering them at a young age to just embrace your hair in whatever stage it
mm-hmm.
is. Just know that it's beautiful, right? So if a young girl who struggles with loving her hair or herself is listening right now, what would you say to her?
I would say to her to appreciate and love her. I know that sounds really simple, and we've been saying that in so many different ways and so many, but I would definitely say that. But I would definitely say pick up this book and read it. I would show her this book and I would say, and then you probably say, oh, you just propaganda. You're trying to sell. No, 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 no. What I'm trying to do is she would see that this was a young girl who did not like her hair, who really, she looked at her siblings' hair and their hair was totally different. And her mother taught her about the diversity of hair, whether your hair is curly, whether it's short, whether it's kinky, whether it's long, whether it's braided, whether it's plaited, whether it's curled, it's still good hair. Because what has happened, we've decided that something is good and bad. And oftentimes when people read about someone else, they see them laughing, they see them dancing in their hair story that will empower them. So I would definitely say to that young girl, is to be able to read about the hair and understand about the history of her hair so that she will know and she can have a sense of pride. And if she can't read, she's not in a position to read, I would tell her mother or somebody else to read. I would tell her also to go to my YouTube page and she would see a lot of kids that are dancing to the I Love My Happy Hair song because we have a song in the book. And so I would definitely sing that song to her and I would just let her know that she is the most beautiful girl and that her hair is done by design and it was made by God and God did not make any mistake when he was making her hair.
Absolutely, yes. So let's talk about parents real quick, right? Because I know that parents, like you're your children's first influence most of the time, right? Or we should be. So
Mhm.
what is one thing parents or caregivers can start doing today to build confidence in their children?
They can start speaking life into them and
Yeah.
making sure that they, even if they just decide, because you got to remember sometimes we grew up with under harsh circumstances and people saying things, you just like your aunt or you just like your father or something like that, is make sure that you say something positive. Even when you ask them, how was their day? Even when you're looking at their grades and you say, well, what can you do to pull this grade? Make sure you already celebrated them and say, I see you pulled your grade up. I've seen you've done well. How can I help you? So trying to speak life, even when you can't speak life into yourself, speak life into someone else. And that would also have you to think about something. And you begin to say something positive about them. And so I would definitely say positive, depositing those positive things into them, saying something positive, surrounding them with positive things. And their life is not very, they're going to run into some bad things and things there. But out of the day, you can say something like Tabitha say, have a good day. If you can't have a good day, then don't go messing up somebody else. And that was even before she, everybody's watching her. I used to really love to say that. I used to tell people that. And they said, oh, now I know where you got that from. And so just just being able to speak life into them and being
Yeah.
able to encourage them. And sometimes that can be very challenging for parents because parents are being bombarded with a lot of adult stuff and disappointment and they need life spoken into them. But I guarantee you, if you start speaking life into that child, she would come in and she would, or he would come in and say something positive to you because that's, what you put in is what you get out.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. We need so much more of that, right? Because if we speak
Mhm.
to our children, guess what? They're gonna go and probably speak life to their friends, their siblings. So it just keeps going around in that positive circle. So you've written multiple children's books. So what kind of impact do you hope your stories have on the next generation?
I hope that it would have change your heart and mind. That it would open them up because there's two things that I really focus on in terms of my book, and that is literacy. Because when you read about that students are not reading on their grade, or you read about, you know, third grade students are not able to read or and
Yeah.
things like that, you want to, the impact is to be able to educate them to be able to, it's okay to read. I know a lot of people do things on Kindle. I'm still old school. I'm still a traditional, putting something in their hand where they can have and hold and to read, fall asleep with, wake up with, and also social emotional learning, because we realize that as you've been talking about the whole time, if people don't feel good, they feel down and out, they've been beaten up by the world, and then they read a book that does the same thing, that's not going to be very helpful. So to help them with their social emotional learning, so as you talked about spreading that love to someone else, because my various books deals with various topics, Little Miss Linda goes to counseling. Little Miss Linda speaks out about sickle cell. A lot of times people are not familiar with the trauma and the pain that comes with that. Little Miss Linda speaks out about rape, there's the divorce, death. These are things that children are experiencing, diversity, colorism. So
Yeah.
it is hope, it is prayer. It may not touch us everybody because I have learned that every book is not for everybody. Every book is not for every child. May not be for your family, but for those individuals that it is for, that it will make a difference by
Yeah.
saying that I can walk away from this and do something differently. I will no longer tease a person about their hair. I will no longer make fun about an individual about their hair.
Absolutely. I love that. This has been amazing. So you have sparked my interest to go and like research hair a little
Number
bit
one,
more.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Absolutely
because I've gone through
wonderful.
so many different phases of hair, but I've never taken time out to really go and do the research on it. So I am I'm curious now to learn a little bit more. So where can listeners connect with you and find your books?
Canisius can connect with me now through just sending me an email, and I put that in my book. It's Linda Holloway Speak at gmail.com. That's Linda Holloway Speak at gmail.com. That's one way. And also on my Facebook page, Dr. Linda J.M. Holloway, and they can buy the book on Amazon. And it's in other places too that are online, from Barnes and Nobles to Target to Walmart. So it's in other different places for those individuals who do not want to purchase from Amazon. It's also on the Ingham Store. And I'm so excited to say several of the local places around here carry my book. My university bookstore carries my book. So I'm excited about that. And then the Legacy Museum here carries Bad Girls of Montgomery. Most people want to know what's Bad Girls of Montgomery is, but it stands for Bold and Determined. These were women who were not often talked about in the Montgomery Boys Boycott movement. So you can find my book there.
Okay, yes, you are definitely teaching us some things tonight. I have to go and do some more research on what you are sharing tonight. So I did kind of ask this question about 2 questions ago, but I always end the show with this
Mm-hmm.
question. So I want to ask it in a different way. You may have answered it just a little bit already, but that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I love to close it with this. So, what impact do you want your books and your work to leave on the world?
The impact that I want my book and my work to leave on the world is that to be for encouragement. to educate people. As you have mentioned several times, I didn't know all this about hair. I didn't know all this about mountain bike because I am an armchair historian. So I want those things to happen. I want people to be able to not only celebrate themselves, but also to be able to celebrate other people and to improve literacy around the world and to also to improve social emotional learning. My books are written for children, but I can also elevate them for adult conversations, which I have done. So all of these topics can be turned into adult conversation. So the legacy, if I want to leave, is definitely that reading is fundamental. Reading is not old and out of style, and it's okay to read, to read, to read, to read, and also to elevate yourself in terms of social emotional learning. Because at the end of the day, if the world doesn't encourage you and there's no one else to encourage you, you can get a book and it would definitely do that. And so I would definitely say those are the things that I would want for my book to do. And thank you so much for that question. It was a great question. It's a great way to end it.
You just made me think of that song, Encourage Yourself, right? So you could pick up
Mhm.
a book and that can help you to definitely encourage yourself. And I always love the aspect of, right? So adults, there are so many things that adults can learn from children's books, right?
Absolutely.
Close your mind off of picking up a children's book and learning something from it, especially if you've had a hard time in your life embracing your hair. Start here. Right? Start here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much for taking this time out, encouraging us, encouraging me to love my hair a little bit more. Because listen, I've been thinking about cutting it off and doing something different. But thank you for your encouragement tonight. Listeners, go and pick up a copy of Dr. Linda's book. Make sure that you connect with her on social media. When you pick up a copy of her book, I'm going to say this on every show. Make sure that you go and leave a review. Go to the
Absolutely.
book
Thank you.
and leave a review. Reviews are so important for authors, but yes, make sure that you go in order, connect with her, share your takeaway from this episode in the comments, and share this with someone. Share this with a mom, your sister, your auntie, or your daughter who needs to learn to love their hair a little bit more. Until next time, thank you for joining us.